Good morning, guys. Happy Saturday to you. 2020 is your year. 2020 is everyone's year as well as next year. And especially if you happen to be holding some precious metals, I think that we are in for a nice ride into the future. But I think there will be a bit more of a pullback before that happens. We'll talk about that a little later. Today, it's my honor to bring to you guys a couple of guests. And if you'll allow me just a couple minutes, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, first of all, to my friend Rich, and I'm going to allow Rich to introduce Andy because he's the one that introduced Andy to me. But Rich and I, we go back a little ways. We're buddies. He and I share recipes together. He's quite the accomplished chef as well as myself. And we are always back and forth about, you should try this and you should try that. And so we have a lot of fun with that. But I met Rich since the time that I got into crypto. I've met Rich, and he and I became fast friends probably because of our love of food. And, one day we're sitting around not long after we met one another, and I said to him, I said, man, what do you know about cryptos? And he looked at me and he said, huh? And I said, Bitcoin. He goes, oh, I have some of that. You do? I was very surprised. And he said, yeah, absolutely. He said, I've got it, tucked away in storage. And he started telling me what he had. And I said, man, you're about to be a whale in crypto. And he said, yeah. And so I kind of expressed to him who I was and what I do. And so we, again, on a lot of different levels, we became fast friends. And he has helped me understand. I have not done any purchases in precious metals in a long time. I'm not a big precious metal guy. I've got everything. I've sold off a lot of precious metals and I've got it all mostly in crypto, but I have enough in precious metals left that, as the prices expand, I kind of become a mini whale in that space too. So I have picked Rich's brain about this to give you guys an idea of who you're hearing from here. And I'm going to allow him to, as I said, introduce Andy. But Rich holds a bachelor's in accounting. He was a certified public accountant for a long time. He has a master's in finance. So he's one of those really smart gurus, right, when it comes to money. And he also is a CFA, which if you know much about a CFA, that is a very, very tough thing to become. I told you guys the hardest thing I ever did in my life was get my Series 3 and Series 7 license. And here my buddy Rich is a certified financial analyst, so he's a chartered financial analyst. He's just way up there, right? Very hard thing to get. And he did that. He's retired now for the most part. And he did that throughout his career. And, I've even had some, there was a time in Rich's life where he was riding around on NetJet. So he's kind of built my dream about that. That's one of the things I'm doing in the next 12 months is signing my NetJet contract. And so he's helped me with that. And that's been a lot of fun. But anyway, it's my honor to introduce to you my friend Rich. For this purpose of today's session, we are using a fake name for Rich. We are not giving out his location. He has a lot of crypto, ladies and gentlemen. He's bought a lot of crypto since I've met him. And I'm going to let him introduce Andy, but we're just going to keep his privacy the way it needs to be because he's got everything in his possession, and so we don't want to put that out there. So, Rich, thank you for coming on this morning. Thank you for introducing me to Andy.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this hour and anything I can do to help you and your constituents. Happy to do it.
Absolutely. So give these guys a little idea of how you met Andy and kind of how that relationship developed. And I think it'll give them a clear picture of really what they're going to have their hands on here. And then
Well,
we'll
let
bring
me,
in.
yeah, and let me do that. But let me start with a quick history of how I got involved in precious metals itself, because I think my road might be a road that some of your listeners are on or have been on, and it was just interesting.
And real quick, are you comfortable giving these people just a general idea of what level of holder you are in precious metals?
Yeah, I mean, as it comes out, I've done lots of transactions, and with Andy, I've done lots of 7-figure transactions with Andy. So
So ladies and gentlemen, lots of seven-figure transactions. Okay, carry on.
Okay. So initially, I was never really involved in precious metals in my career. I was more the traditional bond, stock and bond portfolio guy. And I had a portfolio that I actually had managed for me by a large private bank. And it was very much, 1% of assets under management, and it was very traditional in its holdings. And then I was playing cards every Wednesday with a bunch of guys, and one of this old Italian guy who I knew played cards with. He got sick and he had cancer. He had about 6 weeks to live, and he said, "Could you help me get my affairs in order?" And I said, sure. So here's this guy that was, a laborer, and no one thought he had a nickel. And he thought, I could give him a hand. So I did. And in one of our meetings, he brought out 2 shoeboxes, and it was loaded with double eagle gold coins from the 1880s and that era, maybe, turn of the century. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And he says, well, I want each of my 2 kids to get a box. And he said, I've been collecting these for years. And there was, over $1 million in each box. And I was like, oh my God, here's all this wealth that was no one in the community would have ever guessed it. And here he was shifting all this money to the next generation. And it was seamless. And like, who would know? I was like, oh my God, this is genius. And, from that day, I said, here's this guy. I got all this degree and training, but I just learned something pretty special. So my pal gave me a gift of introduction of precious metals. So I started buying the same double eagles from a coin shop in town where he and I had a mutual friend, trusted fellow. And I bought a whole bunch of, over time, these double gold pieces. And it was probably in the late 1998, 99, 2000. Market at the time was probably around, I was paying high 3s and low 400 per piece. And, it was good. So I did it that way for a while. And then my coin guy, sort of was retiring, and I just let it sit a bit. And then I got involved in purchasing silver because I started reading about silver. So I found a dealer, and it was on the West Coast, and I started buying 100-ounce bars from the Royal Canadian Mint, and I got a whole bunch of those over for a time. And I mean, I started storing those. And then I found myself with all these gold coins of different vintages and all these bars. And it just felt a little bit cumbersome. And I was worried about, like, when I want to give my kids their boxes someday, I've got all these coins with different values, perhaps because of the fineness and the purity and how many was stamped in that particular year. So I decided to make life a little simpler for myself. And then I had all these bulk bars, which, I had a lot of ounces, but I just started to question whether, that was my best play. So I went on a hunt, and I came across Andy, and I reached out to him and, explained my situation, what I, kind of had. And, I started purchasing some eagles, just straight up bullion from him.
Silver eagle?
Gold eagles.
Gold eagles.
Where we started. Yeah. So I bought some gold eagles, and I kept buying those. And then I started to think about my portfolio with the private bank, and the world was going crazy in my mind, and I couldn't figure out any of the valuations. And I was like, I'm just uncomfortable, and I'm liking this sort of more physical approach. So I liquidated my portfolio, and I started to buy large quantities of gold eagles. And so I started that with him. And then over my career, when I got involved in businesses, I always put my kids' trust involved in it, and they had, stock and bond portfolio as well, and I liquidated that, and I put their stuff into Gold Eagles as well. And I did all this with Andy. And then, I talked to Andy and I said, I got all these old coins, and I like to send them to you. And Andy was gracious enough to take all those in. He understands those coins and the vintages and what have you. And he basically converted my old coins into straight up bullion, because to me it just felt cleaner and more easily divisible. So I put a whole bunch of those coins through him, and he did that. And then I had all these bars, and Andy actually helped me with Brinks, and I loaded up a Brinks truck, and we sent it to I believe it was Montreal, and they stored it, and we kept it there for a while, and then we converted it from the gold bars into monster boxes of straight up US, Silver Eagles. We made a big conversion of all of those. And of course, I'm going to get less Eagle monster boxes, because there's more fabrication in the coins and packaging than the straight up bulk, but they're definitely easily recognizable and marketable. So I felt comfortable doing that, and Andy did all those transactions for me. And
so in that process, you're shipping large amounts of gold bars, whatever it happens to be. You're trusting Andy, and I know we'll get into that in a few minutes. You're trusting Andy with these transactions. You're trusting his process, and you've got some pretty special things attached to his business, which you're going to get into. But you basically were like through the mail system or through Brinks or
and I did the Brinks because of the sheer bulk of that volume. But I have sent Andy stuff via, I know his favorite, if it's high value, is through the U.S. Postal Service, and we've done that. And I've sent, because I've had, sometimes I want to liquidate for other projects or tax issues or whatever. So I'm on numerous occasions sent him quite a bit of bullion, because I either purchase or sell, but I've done a lot of both, and I've used different vehicles to get it to him, and it's always been easy. And then if I'm ever wondering, there's a wonderful woman, Jackie, that's been there forever, and I call her up and she can answer any question. And if I don't want to bother Andy, not that he isn't accessible, because he always has been, and we've had hours of chats, but it's been a great experience, and I haven't regretted heading to Miles Franklin at all. And again, I've had experience with the West Coast dealer. I actually used the one up in Montreal shortly, and that wasn't the greatest experience, but Andy has provided a whole lot of comfort, and I've enjoyed our relationship immensely.
That's fantastic.
I don't know what else I can add, except, at this point too, I have most of this, in different locations that I have privately. I've built, I have safes. I use Liberty safes, which I love them. And, I don't have any relationship with them, but they have a quality product. I have a vault door from them. I built a vault. I mean, I've done a lot, holding stuff personally.
Right.
But that's, again, comfort, because I know where it is, and that's how I do it at this point.
Sure. Well, let's go ahead and bring Andy in here, and why don't you tell these guys about his company, Andy, and a couple of the things that make him different than just your typical gold or silver bullion dealer.
Yeah, well, and if you do any research, it's not hard, because Andy's got a long career, and his, I think it's a bit of a family business. It's been around for a long time, and it's, it's one of the few that's in a state that requires bonding, and you know what, and I think that's good. At the same token, I've known Andy enough, and we've actually never met in person. We've threatened to. We've come close. He's been in Florida. We were supposed to meet there. Something happened to one of our schedules. Might have been mine, but we keep trying to meet. But I feel very comfortable just because we've got this great phone relationship over the years, and I, you know, bonded or not, I just have the sense that his inner core is very much a stand-up guy, and you know, I do stuff on a handshake, and I feel like that's Andy too. If he gives you your word, it's his bond, and we've had lots of transactions, and you know, he's 100% stand-up, and I'm extremely comfortable. I mean, I literally put my mom's money through him. So and my kids. So I trust him immensely. And you know, his company's been around for a long time. I think he'll tell you they've never had a complaint or a better business, or he knows how to run a business. And, you know, as a business person of countless business interactions and clients, and I've owned several companies myself, you know when someone does business well, and I can say that about Andy, no question. Without reservation, I would recommend him and his crew. They've been great to a person.
And you're not getting paid to say that?
No, not a nickel. No, you know, that would not be me.
Well, without any further ado, let's bring him on. Andy, are you with us, buddy?
I'm here. Rich, you're a gentleman. I appreciate you saying all those kind things very, very much. Very nice of you to say that.
Well, you've earned every one of them.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a dying breed.
Thanks for having me.
It's a dying breed of people that you can trust with your wealth or your precious metals or whatever it happens to be. So kudos to you for being that guy. And I kind of recognize those same things that Rich is talking about from the first time you and I talked. Give these guys a little breakdown of your business, kind of, you know, give them the Reader's Digest version of how you got started, where it's at. You know, I think you told me about how much business you've done without a single complaint. Give these guys a little rundown quickly.
Sure. So I started the business with my father in 1989, 1990. It's been 30 years. We're somewhat the embodiment of the American dream, and we started with a loan from a friend and selling out my parents' life insurance policies on a wing and a prayer. My father had been in the industry before in a large company. Speaking on behalf of them in Zurich, was approached by some people who wanted to bring a concept of Swiss annuities to the United States. So in late 1989, early 1990, he took a leap of faith. I went to the University of Minnesota with intentions and aspirations of playing baseball, hurt myself, and started the company with my father. And we quickly realized that the same person who bought Swiss franc investments bought precious metals. And so we made that leap. By 1991, we were not only the only U.S. contact point for the Swiss insurance industry, but we were now a fledgling precious metals company. In those days, selling precious metals was akin to selling snow cones in Alaska. It wasn't an easy endeavor, but as Rich had said, we had real strong fingertips and were able to do things the right way. We find ourselves here 30 years later as one of only 24 companies ever approved by the United States Mint, as a company that has eclipsed $6 billion in transactions without ever even having a single customer complaint or regulatory complaint. Never forgetting where I've come from, where we've come from, that those two guys that started with the bank with a loan from a friend and cashing out insurance policies, life insurance policies to start a company on a wing and a prayer. $6 billion in transactions, no customer complaints, no regulatory complaints, A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. All of those things, the accreditation by the U.S. Mint. We're very proud of our accolades. We're very proud of our history. We're very proud of the road we've taken. But the state of Minnesota is the only state in the United States that doesn't care about any reputation. They're the only state that mandates licensing and bonding in a federally non-regulated industry. There's been a tremendous amount of fraud in this industry over the last half a dozen years that has culminated in north of $200 million stolen from big online companies. The accreditation in the state of Minnesota requires licensing, requires continuing education, requires annualized background checks of all employees and principals, myself included. If any of us had a felony related to financial services in any capacity, we would forever be disqualified from the industry. But the biggest thing that has inhibited the majority of all of my peers from doing business in the state of Minnesota is the bonding. Virtually every company in the United States has boycotted Minnesota. The bonding alone is enough to make most companies say, screw Minnesota, we'll work everywhere else. A $2 million surety bond that is guaranteed by the owners, a full disclosure of all assets by the owners, myself. And it's invasive. It's a drag if you own a company, but what it really means, we're held to a higher standard. And so it's not a drag. It is, but it's not. It makes us the safest company, bar none, unequivocally, to work with in the United States. On top of our U.S. Mint accreditation, on top of our Better Business Bureau sparkling record, and the fact that you can't even Google a complaint, state of Minnesota puts an exclamation point on that by bonding all of our transactions, which is something that is completely unique in the industry. So from that, here we are 30 years later, 6 billion in transaction, and I look back upon it with amazement, but know that if it not been for guys like Rich along the way, we wouldn't be the company that we are. Our business is not an online business, and Rich has mentioned graciously about all our conversations that we've had, and really that's been the best part of my business, is getting to know really cool people like Rich. But that's the foundation of a business that's relationship based. I've had many evenings, quiet evenings amongst myself, where I deliberate, should I become an online company? Certainly have the reputation and the ability to turn on a switch and become an online portal, but for a myriad of reasons, namely the tremendous amount of fraud and identity theft that is growing. In fact, numerous conversations with the FBI that we've been told that a lot of the fraud that we even experienced was European state-sponsored fraud. And it got to the point where I just shut off my online store. The minute I shut off the online store and became analog in a digital world, the way we used to be, all the fraud disappeared. But I will tell you that it is a growing epidemic, the amount and the extent and the sophistication of identity theft and fraud. And it was enough to make me say, screw this. And I just closed it all down. And we are now back to being 100% old school, relationship based, accessible, but old school, off the grid, so to speak. And it has enabled us to as much protect our interests as it has been our clients' interest. So that is the 30,000 foot view of how I got here, of who we are, and how we do things. So with that being said, I'll turn the floor back over to you guys, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, very nicely put. So, guys, the reason that I wanted to bring Andy on is because I know there's a lot of folks here that are a lot like Rich. They may have been collecting their metals for a long time. I actually, to be quite square about it, Andy, I don't know that we have that many buyers of precious metal in this group. There may be some here that don't have any or are thinking about getting some. It's a pretty savvy group, pretty intelligent group of folks, pretty well-to-do group of folks. And from that perspective, I think that a lot of them, I have heard this question over and over and over again. I do a lot of one-on-one consulting, Andy, and in those consulting, people had said to me, where are you going to liquidate your silver? And at the time, I just said, I don't know, because liquidating silver at $20 or $40 is different than liquidating silver at $600. It's different than liquidating silver at $1,500. I mean, not that I've had the opportunity, but I just understand the process of how business goes. And, if you've got a $12 premium today, because it gets a little scarce, what are we going to have when it becomes unobtainium and the price is, say, $600 or $1,500 or $2,000? I mean, I just think it's a totally different game at that point. Is that a fair assessment by your standards, Andy?
Well, obviously, the more valuable something gets, the greater the concern you would have in storing and transporting. But we are able to assist no matter what the price level is. We hedge all of our production and all of our inventory. So anyways, bottom line is yes and no. I mean, it becomes more of an issue when you're carrying around with you a much more valuable package, but we have the infrastructure that allows us to assist you. For example, on larger transactions, we can send you UPS insured air bill and instruct UPS to come to your house and pick up your product. We put the insurance on the air bill through a Lloyd's of London program that meshes with UPS's, so the driver doesn't even know what they're picking up, only knows that it's insured for maybe $500 through UPS, but up to $100,000 per package through Lloyd's of London. I'd like to make a caveat to all of this in terms of the way that I view precious metals for you and your listeners here on this call, because it's important for me to explain how I view them. And if you view it this way, I think it takes on a different role. When I was a 19-year-old kid, 31 years ago, starting in this industry, my father said there would only be one rule or he would fire me, and this has stuck with me in terms of the way that I look at precious metals. At 19, I said, well, geez, I can deal with one rule, I guess. If that's all that I have to deal with, that's cool. What is it? He said, you'll buy something every 2 weeks, period. It's the only rule. Geez, 19 years old, that's not a tough one. So here I am at 50 now, but I've honored my promise to my father, even though he's all but retired for the most part. Won't fire me any longer, but I've honored that promise. And for 30 years, I have never missed a 2-week period accumulating metal, ever, not once. Whether I was out of town or sick or not, I made that purchase, always paying myself first. And that has been the way that I have accumulated my wealth. I'm not the poster child for Finance 101. I have far more gold and silver than most people would consider to be prudent. I look at it not as an investment. I look at it as wealth that I hope I never need to use. If I do, I'm damn glad I have it, whether it be an emergency or an opportunity. If not, I give it to my children. And outside of probate, no one in the world knows what I have. And it, to me, is just plain and simply wealth. And so in that light is the way that I would advise people. I don't look at this as an investment whatsoever. I look at this as the foundation of wealth and generational wealth that is immutable, that I know that when I pass on to my children, God willing, they pass on to theirs, and on and on and on. When the dollar bills that are in our wallet, which are being destroyed right in front of us by the Federal Reserve, that has created $9 trillion in wealth since last September, in a country that took 300 years to create 800 billion. I know that the dollar bills in my wallet and our wallets will be hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian long before gold is rendered obsolete. So to me, it's wealth, and immutable wealth. With that being said, that's the foundation from my advice on precious metals. Not speculative, not an investment, but wealth. And so pulling money off the table, when you make profit in crypto, when you make profit in equities, pulling it off the table, so to speak, putting some chips in your pocket before you get to the cashier window is always a good idea. And I played blackjack with a friend of mine every time we travel as families. He always would, at the end of the night, have tons of money. I could never understand how the hell he did it. I sat at the table with him. I watched him. Did you do that? He would always say, every hand I win, didn't you see I put a green chip in my pocket? And at the end of the night, he had a pocket full of chips. And that's kind of the key here is when we talk about what gold and silver are to me, when you're doing other things and having success in other areas, pulling some chips off the table, putting some green chips in your pocket, and converting it into real wealth that has a 6,000-year track record as being such, is how you get ahead, instead of continually speculating and hoping that the trend continues in your favor. So that's the way I look at things, and I'll turn it back over to you with any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andy. And also, if there's anything you can do on your end there, Andy, when you first gave your intro, you were super, super clear. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what you did this last time around, but that clearness went away, and it kind of got down to about maybe 20% of how clear it was to start with. So if there's something you did different, maybe go back to what you were doing, but let's carry on. So I want to remind all of the listeners here about a conversation I had at the second quarter of 2019, which I think will bring you up to what we're doing here today. I had a conversation with a gentleman who had the very rare privilege as a gold dealer, and also was creating the very first recognized by the IMF gold standard digital token of gold, which is not available to the retail public. It's only available to the banks. And if you're on a specific institutional platform that I'm on, you can also get access to it. But this gentleman had the opportunity to go to Monaco, sit in on a meeting, and he was sitting there with multiple trillionaire families from Europe, not names you're gonna hear in the open public. And they were being advised by an advisor, and he was there to be their link. They were being advised that the 100-year rally in real estate is over. Get your money out of real estate and put it in two things. They said 25% gold. They really didn't mention silver. They said gold and precious metals. We kind of know what that means. And they said 75% crypto. That is our assessment. That is our advisory position to these trillionaire families. That was the second quarter of 2019. Look at what's happening in real estate right now. I know that people are rallying to buy everything that's on the street from a perspective of, some of the hot pockets in just home buying. But look at what's happening in the real estate sector, where, the commercial side of things. Also, look at what's happening in gold. I kind of held my stance as a trader on what I saw in the chart, and I said, when the chart changes, I'll relook at it. And so now at this point, when we get done here today, I'm going to do a little charting for you guys. We're not going to hold to Andy for all that. He can stay if he wants to, but I'll do a little charting for you guys and tell you what I see. I'm going to join that conversation, and then we'll ask Andy some questions with another conversation that I had this year with the same person. The same person said, listen, let me give you a macro viewpoint on gold and silver. He said, once we break 2,300, he said, the rally will not be able to be stopped. And he said, we're expecting, not fast, ladies and gentlemen, he said, in this decade, he said, we expect and plan to see a $10,000 gold price, as well an $8,000 to $10,000 silver price. Now, this is coming from a room of trillionaires, advisory boards advising trillionaires. So I'm just telling you where it's coming from. I'm not telling you that because it's that high up, it makes it a fact. So don't go away from here and say, well, Jay said, and he had Andy on, right? Don't say that. That's not the case. I'm just repeating what I was told that I'm allowed to talk about privately. And what I was shared is that when you start seeing your silver price in that $5,000 to $7,000 region, you're gonna want to sell your silver. And the reason for that is that this gentleman said to me that the governments are going to do just like India recently did. India went out here and put a big tax on gold, so people have been holding gold forever, waiting on their ship to come in. Their ship starts to come in, and India hits them with confiscation in the form of a tax. So what I was told is you're going to see laws come into being at the swipe of a pen that says you, the public, can't sell it at that price. This is the maximum you can sell it at. They're going to create kind of two markets as well as probably a black market. I think they'd probably create the biggest black market on silver you'd ever seen. But anyway, because silver supposedly has a real set amount of silver, they're not finding it. You know, Farmer Jed's not finding another vault of silver out in his field on a regular basis, but that does seem to continue to happen with gold. They just keep finding. In 2013, they found one of the largest reserves ever, I think, in the Middle East. And so that continues to happen. I hear stories of these guys in Hollywood that are mining gold off of asteroids. Again, I can't validate any of it. I'm just telling you that the silver thing, you just don't hear them continuously telling you, we're finding more, we're finding more. But if you look at all the white papers being written that come out of Harvard and MIT, all these people are writing white papers about technology to come in our future, that all of it has to have silver. Like almost every single bit of it, especially in the communications field, has to have silver, right? So if you marry those two together, I can certainly see where these people are coming from when they start speculating on the price. Not to mention they're in a pretty high up room where things are kind of decided for planet Earth. So take it for what you will. I'm not stating it today as the facts. I'm just sharing with you a conversation I had. And realize that Andy can be a source for you at any point in time between now and whenever you're ready, that you can use his facilities there, use the 30-year track record he has, and feel comfortable with it. And I would like to ask him just a couple of questions, and then if somebody here has an intelligent question you'd like to put in the questions, we'll shoot a couple at him. The goal here was to keep Andy only for about an hour. It's his Saturday morning too. But the couple questions I had, Andy, is can you walk me through the process? I know a lot of people are very familiar, for example, with a monster box. Silver gets to a certain price. They want to sell their silver. They call you. What's kind of the process there with their monster box? Maybe they have 10, maybe they have one.
If they want to sell it, it's the same thing as buying it. We just would confirm the price, lock it in, assist them with shipping, whether it be we send UPS to them or tell them how to send it back registered mail. And upon receipt, we immediately send them a wire or an overnight check. It's truthfully and literally that simple. I'd like to real quick just back you up and put an exclamation point on what it was that you were saying about being in the company of these people who were very wealthy and sophisticated and making predictions of how high gold will go. You said $10,000. Now, I've heard that too, but I'd like to tell you why I think people of that ilk, if they really indeed are connected, the way that you would expect them to be when you're talking trillion, would say that. For the last nearly 80 years, there's only been one tier one asset in the world, and that's been United States Treasuries, or fully segregated dollar deposits in an escrow account. So if the Bank of England was trading with the Bank of Switzerland, the only collateral that would be used would not be pounds or francs, would be US Treasuries or escrowed US dollars in a fully funded escrow account. Now, that's been since Bretton Woods in 1944. If you Google what a tier one asset is, it will tell you it is a riskless asset. Through 2017, the Western central banks were net sellers of gold, always capping the rally. In 2018, out of nowhere, the Western central banks bought more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined, out of nowhere. In 2019, those numbers were up 90%. And this year continue up unabated. Again, quietly in 2019, in April, under what is called the Basel III agreement, Basel being the location of the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central banker's central bank. They quietly, they being the central banks and the Bank of International Settlements, get this, the most important development of my 30-year career, hands down, not even close. They reclassify gold as the only other tier one asset on the planet. Bet you didn't know that.
I did
So
not.
you have the most sophisticated, well-funded, well-informed group of traders on the planet who are telling you that, well, now gold is a riskless asset on par with US Treasuries, which has been considered the only riskless tier one asset since Bretton Woods. And the front running of that decision by a year and a half, remember the year before, they bought more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined. They front ran the decision. They knew it was coming. Continued to do it in 2019 by popping those numbers up over 90% and continued to do it today. So you have the most sophisticated, well-informed, well-funded, influential traders on the planet who are telling you that gold is a riskless asset, that they are accumulating it in lieu of dollars. They are shedding dollars to accumulate gold. Now, when we talk about why gold would get to $10,000 an ounce, because I believe it'll be the underpinning in a non-convertible fashion to a new digital currency. They will use a distributed ledger to, I believe, denote the gold backing the currency. I think the fact that they reclassified gold as a tier one asset is the biggest event of my career, and it would be perfect excuse to peg a dollar if they want to ever have credibility again after the mismanagement of the currency. Remember, 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago, and we created 9 trillion since September. And the fact that they have reclassified gold as a tier one asset screams to me it'll be the underpinning of a new currency, a digital currency, and that'll be pegged to gold, and they will use the distributed ledger to show the backing, the veracity of the backing of the gold. Now, where it's held and who audits it and all that kind of stuff is another story, but the bottom line is simply this. The reclassification of gold as a tier one asset is all I need to know about what the long game is for gold. And when you talk about being told, coincidentally, by some very sophisticated people, they expect gold to go to this level, putting it in reference to a tier one asset category, the only other one in the world next to US Treasuries, probably makes that seem a little bit more significant.
Wow. That is a huge exclamation point and is information I did not have or know. And I'll even go on to say that in my mind, when you say those things that you're saying as a speculative possibility, it takes me past 10,000. It takes me like maybe 20,000, maybe 30,000, right? And let's don't forget, it wasn't that many years ago, people didn't even think about a 30 or a $40,000 Dow price, right? So, if all you can see from 2 decades is, say, a $2,000 price in gold, it takes a lot to open the mind up and go, oh, well, we're going to go to 10. Well, wait a minute, maybe we're going to go to 20. Well, surely maybe we go to 30. Well, if you think that they're going to have the potential of a digital dollar, which I've been being told we're going to see a digital dollar in the next 24 months, that meme started being shared with me about 90 days ago, that in the next 24 months, we're going to see a digital dollar. We're going to see a digital dollar of every country. And in fact, I was told none of them will move until China creates and puts out their digital dollar. Well, China's now saying that by the end of this year, they're going to have their digital currency in full swing, and they're already burning cash. So the leader is leading, so to speak. I was also told that because we kind of dumped all our derivatives on China, I was also told that for the last couple of years that gold was being held back considerably while China was one of the biggest buyers of gold, and this was kind of payback from the USA for, hey, we're sorry we dumped all our derivatives on you. Gee, we're so sorry, right? Sure you are. And so, I don't know, I don't know the facts of all those things. I hear these things, they come from very high up, powerful people, and I write them down, I keep them, I watch them, I see what happens, what doesn't. Sometimes it comes to pass, sometimes it doesn't. But that is a phenomenal exclamation point. Do you have, before I ask you my last question, do you have any speculation on a price beyond $10,000? I mean, to back an entire country's currency, it might need to be bigger than that.
Well, I mean, you want to talk pie in the sky. If you took all of the gold we supposedly hold at Fort Knox, which hasn't been audited since 1956, and divided that into the debt, you're talking over $120,000 an ounce. If you use the gold to pay off the debt, you'd revalue gold the way that President Roosevelt did when he confiscated gold in 1933 for $20 an ounce, and then revalued it at $35 an ounce, increasing the value by 40%. Now, I'm not talking that these things will certainly ever happen, but when I started in this industry, the Dow Jones was 2,100 and the Nikkei was almost 40,000. And Japan owned Rockefeller Center and Pebble Beach and casinos in Vegas and ski resorts in Colorado. They were taking over the world financially and from a manufacturing standpoint. If it had an engine or a computer chip, it was made better in Japan. Well, here we are 30 years later with Japan's interest rates being at or near zero the whole time. And their Nikkei is basically half of what it was 30 years ago. With those low interest rates, can't even spur people into it. And I watched the Dow Jones increase 15-fold. And kind of what you were just saying, I do believe that markets move up higher to the upside than anyone ever thinks possible, and will fall further to the downside than anyone ever thinks possible. And so when we talk about gold going to these crazy levels, the fact that it's been revalued as a riskless asset and accumulated by the most sophisticated people on the planet tells me that it will go higher than just about anyone thinks possible, myself included. I don't know what that number will be, but it's a question of measured against what. And when you see it's already at all-time highs against every currency on the planet. The dollar was the last one to break. I believe you will see the gold move much higher than anyone thinks possible in the light of a declining U.S. dollar. What the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government have done to combat what has happened to the economy due to COVID is tantamount to destruction of the currency and the sowing the seeds of hyperinflation. So how high will it go measured against what? A destroyed dollar or what have you? I think it'll go higher than people think possible. And the pegging of it and the reclassification of it as the only other tier one asset in the world, all but guarantees that. And when we talk about silver, it has a 90% correlation since the beginning of time between gold and silver. One of the reasons, it's one other thing I'd really like to make mention of. The reclassification of gold was the most significant event of my career. The second most significant event of my career happened this last March. And I'd like people to go to Kitco. You can do it on my website, but Kitco has a better feature for this. Kitco.com, Kitco, they're a competitor of mine. They got a fancy website. And you can go under charts and data, tab at the top, and you can look at the price of gold and silver since March.
Just one second there. Hey, George, would you mind pulling that up and putting it on the whiteboard? If you're still around, George. Thanks. If he is, we'll see that come up. Carry on, Andy. I don't mean to interrupt
no
you.
No problem. So it's kitco.com, and under the subsection of charts and data, you would find the ability to look at gold and silver over the last year. Now we can go back to April of 2019 and see the significance of the price since the reclassification as a tier one asset, and it'll be even more startling. But let's just talk about March, since this March. Well, silver is up 150% since March, 150%, even more, 160, and gold's up over 60%. And why is the question? Well, I did a lot of public speaking over the years where I would talk about the manipulation of the gold market. And without getting too deep into it, gold and silver have been a rigged game for a very long time. I would get up on stage and talk about JP Morgan being the chief rigger and manipulator of the market. Got a lot of heat for that. People told me I was crazy, that there's no way that this conspiracy could be that large, that the traders have too big of mouths, that they couldn't keep it shut. I was mocked about this at conferences by people with more time in the industry than me, and I stuck to my guns. All the information that I was coming by told me that this was right, and it was. The second most significant event of my career happened this last March when JP Morgan was indicted, 6 of their precious metals traders, in what is now still an ongoing Justice Department investigation, indicted 6 of the JP Morgan metal traders with federal racketeering charges for manipulating the precious metals market. Racketeering charges are what Rudy Giuliani used to bring down the New York family crime bosses. And it's no joke. And 6 of their traders have already turned state evidence. They are facing jail time for federal racketeering, manipulating of the markets. Since that day, not only has JP Morgan gotten out of the short market game, they stopped manipulating the market. They're no longer short. They're 100% long, from being the largest concentrated short position the COMEX market has ever seen to now net long for the first time in 12 years. They are net long in the futures market. And so, knock it off. Aside from that, you have admissions from companies like Bear Stearns. They just admitted, if you Google it, it just popped up. They admitted that some of their traders are going to jail, admitted they were taught how to do this from their bosses. Scotiabank just paid many hundreds of millions of dollars of fines for manipulating the metals market. You have the heat being turned up on all these commercial banks who have held down the paper price for a very long time, and they're now all being investigated and outed and facing jail time. So you have the biggest short position that has capped the market for all these years, trying to make Western currencies appear stronger than they are, being busted and going to jail and getting out of shorting the price. So when you look at what happened since last March, since those indictments came down, a silver price that's been, I won't call it set free, but certainly doesn't have JP Morgan holding on the price, and it pops 150%, and gold up 60% and backfilling, and I think you'll see the rise continue. And that's why when you say things like $2,300 gold, and then taking off, I believe it. I think that the numbers that you're talking about are not irrational, and I don't think that they are unrealistic. So I just want that to be known, that this market has been for a very long time held back by central bank and commercial bank rigging and manipulating. And the only way you can successfully manipulate a market over an extended period of time is to push it in the direction it is going. And when you have the most sophisticated, well-funded, well-informed traders on the globe accumulating and no longer holding back the price, Jay, the sky's the limit.
Wow. Wow, well put. And also thank you for sharing those events. I mean, these are things that I can tell you the average investor in silver or gold just don't know. I mean, unless they're really doing their homework, they just don't know those things. So that's fantastic. And also, you know, I was involved in a meeting on the internet a couple of years ago, and I was told they were moving Blythe Masters into a retirement position because they were trying to avoid her prosecution, and that she was kind of at the head of that manipulation. And I don't know if you know this or not, but they've now moved her to the head. They funded her $70 million and funded her over at Digital Asset Group, which is a group that is kind of heading up the entire takeover, so to speak, of Bitcoin on Wall Street. I actually am not a big advocate of people putting their money in Bitcoin, and it's mainly for this reason. There's other reasons, but it's mainly this reason, that the takeover first happens at Bitcoin, and then it comes to Ethereum, and then it comes to others, and so on and so forth. But
No,
it's a
for
little
your
bit
listeners, for your listeners, Blythe Masters ran the JP Morgan Precious Metals desk.
Yeah.
And she should be in prison, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned. But she is a central theme, she's a central player in all of the talks about JP Morgan manipulation. JP Morgan, through the manipulation, Jay, has amassed the single largest physical position of silver the world has ever seen, north of 1 billion ounces. Most of it, almost all of it, off the exchange. I do want to talk about something else. Do I have time to talk about?
Yeah, no, we'll stay as long as you want to stay, man. I don't have a time commitment.
So one of the things that is happening that is very, very illuminating to me as to where the price is going is what's happening on the COMEX market. The COMEX market is the commodity exchange, where typically the COMEX market was a speculative place. Now, for a company like mine, the COMEX market is legitimate. We use it to hedge our inventory. If I have 1,000 ounces of gold in my warehouse, I have to sell 1,000 ounces on paper on the COMEX market. And I do that because if the price goes up on my inventory, that's great. But what if it goes down? If I'm holding 1,000 ounces and the price of gold falls by $100, that's a $100,000 loss. So what I do is I sell short on COMEX so that it moves up commensurately with what I just lost in my inventory. And that's a legitimate hedge. A farmer who plants a field in the spring may want to forward sell his production on COMEX so that he doesn't have to deal with the risk of the summer months as it's growing, and take out the risk associated with what could be a poor season or stuff like that. So those are legitimate hedges. Well, typically as it pertains to gold, no one ever stood for delivery. The hedge for the speculators, they're not hedging. The speculators would be doing this to speculate on the movement to gold, the price. And so the commercial banks who would naked short, meaning selling short something you don't own, could do so unlimitedly, if that's a word, by selling stuff they didn't own, driving down the price, because no one would ever stand for delivery. So they would just throw enough short contracts onto the market to break the back of the people who were taking the other side of the trade. They would create a perception of reality, drive down the price because they had enough money to do it. Just keep shorting until people run, right? So when someone sells short on the COMEX, someone goes long. It's a zero-sum game. There's always someone on the opposite side of that trade. So the commercial banks could sell short indefinitely until it broke the back of the people who were long, and they would sell. No one ever stood for delivery. It was a gambling casino, if you will. Well, over the last several months, something's changed. And what I'm about to tell you, to me, is also incredibly significant as to where I think things are going. We've been seeing more gold and silver delivered off the COMEX in a month than typically we see in a year, month after month. And what you're seeing is quickly the COMEX is being turned into a delivery mechanism. The genie's been let out of the bottle. Now let's talk about that for a second. When a commercial bank naked shorts something, they're selling something they don't own. If no one ever says, I'll take delivery of that, I don't care what the price is, then if no one ever says that, then they can just push it down so far down that people just say, I'm out. Well, what's been happening is that very high net worth individuals, family offices, sovereign wealth funds, and super wealthy people are saying, akin to playing poker with your friends, when the guy or gal you play with always goes all in and you know they're bluffing, someone's called their bluff. And you can see the collective faces of the commercial banks turn white. Because what has happened is that more metal is being pulled off the exchange in 1 month than we have seen in 1 year over the last 3 or 4 delivery months. So much so that the COMEX market is beginning to freak out. They just expanded the eligible refinery list by double. For my entire career, there was about 80 refiners that they would call eligible for their product to be listed as a COMEX approved refinery bar. They just literally doubled it or more by allowing another 80 plus refiners, most of them in China and Japan. So they are scrambling across the globe to suck up any gold that they can because they're very scared they don't have enough on the exchange to meet the level of redemptions by the people in the know. Now, if you think about this for a second, a silver contract is 5 1,000 ounce bars. You're talking roughly 350 pounds. And these people are pulling off hundreds of contracts, if not thousands. You're talking semi-trucks full of silver. Why are they doing that? Why are they dealing with the logistics of semi-trucks worth of silver? Why do you think? They're doing it because they are terrified that it's a sucker's game and that it's a term called rehypothecation comes into play, where the same asset is sold many times over because no one ever stands for delivery. So they rehypothecate it to enable the game to continue to play. Well, now the people in the know are standing for delivery in massive quantities. which is going to expose the COMEX market for what it is, a fraud. And all of these things put together, the commercial banks, the central banks, and the players in the know pulling metal off the exchange in record amounts, both gold and silver, should tell you what's going on, should tell you where the price is going. And I have never sold gold and silver as a hedge against the apocalypse, as a tool against being a doom and gloomer. But I will tell you simply this, that the most sophisticated players in the world not only are massively accumulating metal, but they're pulling it off the exchanges, which to me reeks of fear and desperation when you see the exchanges up their eligible refinery list, shotgunning it, not doing really due diligence. Half of these refineries coming from China that have been accused of sending out and creating tungsten-laced bars. These are not the movements of markets that are in good shape. So put it all together, and it tells me that gold and silver will be the central theme of what comes next. And when you talk about cryptos, yeah, they will too. They will be more the rails and the tools by which, you know, transactions are done. But in terms of, I think, the foundational wealth backing many of these cryptos or backing many of these new currencies will be 6,000-year-old wealth, gold and silver. That I'm fairly convinced of. And the movements of these players and what they are doing kind of backs that.
Wow, interesting information. Thank you, Andy, for being willing to share that. You mentioned the banking system there as far as putting the whole piece of the pie together, and I think people should, especially here on this channel, those folks that have been learning how to really read a chart, I think you should look at your IBX chart and understand it's probably fixing to get cut in half. I think that it's just holding up by a thread. And I think along with that, we get the decoupling of crypto with the traditional market. I think there's one last little like push of liquid, like more of a liquidity event in the dollar. And then I think the dollar just goes on a long-term hiatus to the downside. And so, yeah, exactly what Andy said. I think that if you put all the pieces together, you can get a pretty good puzzle on your desk of what you should be doing. And for me, that predominantly for me, it's cryptos. And the only reason it's cryptos is because I have a little bit more of a risk tolerance. And in a risk tolerance environment, what I want is I want high volatility. I want fast volatility. You know, we just took profits on one of our trades we've been holding for almost a year, Andy, and in that profit center, I mean, for me personally, it was about a 21x of my money. But we had people here in this group. I mean, I had several of them that emailed into me. They got a 70x return. In 2017, I had probably 15 or 20 trades that year in the crypto market where I was 100+x on my money. And so for me, I've always been a believer in precious metals, and I've just never been a big stacker of them. So I've got a fair amount, and I don't think I need a tremendous amount more, but I have told people as we take profits, this is the same thing you just said earlier, as we take profits in crypto and you're looking for a place. So I'm a believer of when you make a big profit in crypto, you get it out of crypto or you're just going to give it back. So where are you going to put it? Well, a portion of it, I've told them, needs to go in precious metals so that your wealth can be stored in something that's as long-term as precious metals are. So I think that, you know, through the time here, you're gonna be a very busy man with this group here, and that excites me because I think that your information, your knowledge, your obviously your reputation that goes ahead of you is all in place. So thank you so much for that. I have one more question. Then we have a guy here that actually serves our group on a huge level. So I'm going to let him ask his question first. He's actually a moderator here. So after I ask my last question, I'm going to let him go, and then we'll open it up to the crowd and see if anybody's got any really good questions for you. And we'll try not to hold you too long. If you run out of time, you just tell us, hey guys, I'm out of time.
No, I'm all good.
Perfect. So my last question was this. It revolves around the premium. So I want to throw out a speculative notion that I kind of see in my head, and then you tell me, are you on track, or maybe it looks more like this. So we'll go again. I preface the word speculative. So let's just say today you and I had a conversation last week, and you expressed to me and shared with me that right now the premium has come down because things are kind of quiet, volatility's down. But if all of a sudden the price drops, everybody's going to rush in to buy, the premium is going to go up. And so let's look at that down the road. And you and I were talking about, if you pay a bit of a premium now, you kind of get it back on the other side. So let's look at that a little bit closer. First thing I want to ask you, and then I'll just proceed with my thought. So give me kind of a yes or no question, yes or no answer if you can. If we see a $600, $1,000 silver ounce price, if the premium today is, during high volatility, $12, $13, is it safe to say that down the road, if you're seeing those bigger numbers, and yet again, you still have less access to inventory, that you could see $130, $200 premium? And is that even possible, like at $1,000 silver level?
I guess it's possible. Premium is a function of supply and a function of demand. In March, with $11.80 silver, you could not find an ounce of silver anywhere for under $20, which is a 50% premium. So, nearly anyway, 40%. Could you, excuse me, rather 100% premium? Could you see that? Yeah, sure, depending upon how high the price goes. But, I guess when we're talking dollar terms, what's it worth? I don't know. I don't know how high the premium goes, but I will tell you that it will only go higher because you're dealing with, well, let me try to rephrase it this way to give you an idea of how high it could go. The Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund a couple weeks ago put 5% of their 5% of their $16 billion pension fund into gold. That's 5%, that's $800 million. That is more than the entire open interest on the COMEX market right now in gold, meaning open contracts. If they would have put that into physical metal instead of probably GLD, ETF, there'd be nothing left for anyone else. Overnight, it would drive things up so fast, it's crazy. And you're talking weeks before the market would catch back up. That's how thin this market truly is. Now, that's only 5%, which amounts to almost a rounding error. You look at Warren Buffett putting 2.5% of Berkshire Hathaway into American Barrick, the largest mining company on the planet. That amounts to a rounding error. But when you see these big institutions, these hedge funds, and billionaire investors start to put money into gold and silver, it should tell you where these prices are going. You start to see that level of wealth jump in. The premiums will go higher than anyone thinks possible because it will just immediately dry up all the supply. There's not enough supply to handle the influx. It is said that right now, the average exposure to a precious metals portfolio from an American investor is 0.5% across the board. The 30-year mean is 2.5%. If we just saw a revision to the mean as prices move higher, that's a 5-fold increase in demand for precious metals at a time when the infrastructure really can't handle that. You'll see premiums go higher than anyone thinks possible just to revision to the mean. And when you see guys like Stanley Druckenmiller and Warren Buffett and the Ohio Police and Fire Pension start to dip a toe into the water, it's coming. And so those premiums will go higher than people think possible, as will the prices, as you get more of a demand from very influential people like Warren Buffett and Stanley Druckenmiller and institutions like the Ohio Police and Fire Union. So,
Wow.
yeah, I think they'll go higher than people think possible.
So let me get to my speculation, and then you can speak on this, and we'll go to these other questions. So here's my speculation. My speculation is when we see let's don't even think about the fact that I've been told we're going to see $10,000 on silver right alongside of gold. Let's just talk about, $1,000. Let's talk about $1,500, something like that. And maybe at that time, there's a client here in the listener base that says, that's enough for me. I bought my silver way back here and I won out. And they come to Andy and they want to sell their silver. And let's just assume for a moment in time that maybe at that time, inventory is like next to nil. At this point, Andy's business has changed. It's not now filling your shelf full of inventory to sell to people. It's more connecting a buyer and a seller together, because that is your inventory. People selling today goes to the people buying today. And let's just say, for example, the premium's $100 as an example. If that's the case, is the client that you're taking in to sell their silver, are they going to be able to participate in that premium, or does all that premium go into Andy?
No, hell no. Yeah, all of that, almost all that premium goes back to the client. In March, with a Silver Eagle being $20 with $11.80 silver, I would have paid someone selling those same coins probably $19. So the majority of all the premium goes back to the client. We guarantee the highest bid price in the country for that reason.
That's exactly why I asked you that question. I want you guys to understand there are a lot of advantages we've talked about here today with Andy, from the bonding, from the insured to $6 billion, no regulatory problems, nobody's ever complained. So his reputation is spotless, right? But I also want you guys to know, at the end of the day, being the speculative people that you are, it comes down to also, can we get all those things and show me the money too? And Andy just pointed out to you that and I believe this wholeheartedly. A lot of people here, they go online, they find a bullion dealer, they order. I actually bought 2 monster boxes 2 years ago off of somebody that, they still had it in the box. They'd opened it, to make sure that there was actually silver in there, but it came from the mint, and it had the mailing attachments on it and all that, so you could see where it came from. And it was just an online dealer. You're going to be, in my opinion, you're going to be very hard pressed when you come to sell your silver to match what Andy just said to you. So I'm pointing out to you, when you say show me the money as well as show me the reputation, Andy's got both, and I'm very impressed by that. So that was my last question. Yeah,
Jay,
go ahead.
could I interject here for a sec?
Yeah,
this is Rich.
Yeah, please.
I can just attest to that, because it was probably just, in the last few months that I've sent packages to Andy to liquidate some of my gold holdings to increase my crypto portfolio. So I wanted to sort of do some reallocation, and absolutely shared in that premium. I can tell you that.
I appreciate you saying that, Rich. And there are times when those premiums are accentuated and times when they're not. And it's pretty easy thing to check out. It's a pretty easy thing to make sure you're getting treated fairly. I've learned all along that being penny wise and pound foolish or short-sighted is not the key to success. That the only way your business perpetuates and to get, this is business perpetuation. The amount of goodwill that that I have accumulated, luckily with Rich, what goes around comes around, and you can see that, and I've always known that, and so we're not short-sighted. I would, if my clients don't succeed, we don't succeed, and this is proof positive of that. So yeah, we will always guarantee what amounts to the highest bid price in America. If product was purchased from us, there's no commission charged. If product was not purchased from us, it's a minuscule commission, and one that even still will 9.5 times out of 10 beat everyone in the industry.
Yeah, and I will just say, those dealings are never a struggle. And, there's a couple other things I just want to touch on as it relates to Andy is, he's been helpful in things like, if back years ago when, I might have been underwater on some pricing on some product, we were able to sell, for tax advantage where, I had some paper losses, or I could, sell some and rebuy it in a couple of weeks. But we didn't, it could be shelved or however, and he's able to help you with whatever particular problem you're trying to solve. Or if I found myself at one point wanting to take some gold and increase the silver holdings because the ratio between the two was sort of out of whack, like never, had seen before, he was able to, do transactions to balance my portfolio, if you will. So there's just so many things that he's been able to help with, storage issues, tax issues, balancing portfolios, and the transactions is, for me to be able to, as I say, take some and do more crypto with it, was just easy. And I'm really here because I'm frankly just grateful to both these people. I mean, Andy's been a long relationship with having me be more than comfortable in my bulk of my holdings and wealth. And Jay, we talked about how years ago I was into cryptos, and I figured out enough to get probably some of the top 4 coins that have remained on the top, but I didn't do anything with them because, I just didn't have the abilities or technologies or relationships or whatever. And Jay has helped me do what I really wished I could have done years ago. And we've talked by just simple hodling for all these years. I'm in a great position, but at the same time, I've left a lot on the table, and I haven't frankly enjoyed the game. And I love the numbers. I love the activity, and I have expanded my crypto portfolio to, maybe 20 different coins, which I never would have dreamt possible or had the ability without having met Jay. And I've seen that improve, and my balances and just my whole position is so much stronger in crypto as well. So between these two people, they made my life better. And when I was able to put them both together and perhaps bring something positive to the listening base, I'm just happy to be able to do that. And that's what really brings me here today, is gratitude to both. They're both spectacular in their own ways. And I thank you.
I appreciate you saying that very much, Rich. And I'd like to just make mention of one thing, Rich. I've never, I think you will attest to this, I've never, ever called to solicit your business. Our business is not about solicitation. It's about respecting privacy. Precious metals and Swiss francs should be right alongside in the dictionary the word privacy. And if you own cryptocurrency, then you understand that. We are all about privacy and respecting that. We will be here when you need us. Accessibility is very important to me, but so too is respecting people's privacy. You'll never get a phone call from me, and if you do, Rich, you'll know it's damn important. Either that or I'll be in.
Or you're just checking to see how I've been doing and how your wife's health is and all these issues. And it's just a different relationship, and you do business in just a fabulous way. And if I see that phone ring, that's a call I would take instantly.
Well, I do appreciate that very, very kindly. I'm certainly happy, Jay, to, again, very appreciative to be here, but I have time. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, I don't want to take all the space here. I'm going to turn it over to George. George is a partner of mine. He's become one of my very best friends. He's also always kind of lurking in the background to fix any technical issue. He comes from a long background with Apple and Microsoft, and is helping. I can't tell you how many hundreds of people in the crypto space with their technical difficulties. It's not quite as easy as just buying a coin and putting it away. So he's that guy, and I'm gonna turn it over. He has a question, then we'll just look at and see if there's a couple questions in the group. The last comment I will make is something I asked Andy a week ago. I said, Andy, can you sell precious metals to a trust? Is there any KYC that would keep you from doing this? And he said we can sell it to whatever you want to sell it to. So guys, just keep that in the back of your minds. It's a nice thing to know. It's good for privacy. George, the floor is yours, buddy. Ask your question, and then we'll take a couple other ones.
Thank you, Jay. Andy, big fan, longtime fan. I don't know when I started listening to you, and actually it started with Andy Hoffman way back in the day. It was over a decade ago. I couldn't even put a finger on it, and when Rich said Miles Franklin, I was like, wait, it's that Andy? So it's great to hear really kind of a little bit deeper details on what's going on, because one of the questions that I had was back in the day when I have been accumulating or was accumulating, I always felt uncomfortable buying from someone online. Number one, there was the trust factor, and we're talking, in 2006 timeframe. And there was also like, what kind of records are being kept? And so, it was easy for me to go down to my local coin guy and say, here's some cash and I want some silver in place. And, I could walk away when he really didn't know who I was. And so, if you want to share a little bit about, what type of records are kept on your customers, and are those shared with other groups?
So precious metals is the last real private endeavor. There is virtually no KYC regiment or regulations whatsoever. If red flags were to come up, we are, for example, if I were to get a call from someone calling me from Bahrain or the United Arab Emirates, let's say, and wanted to, was asking me all strange questions and wanted to place an order that didn't seem right, we're supposed to mark it as a flagged transaction. But those things don't happen. When a normal person calls to buy precious metals, an account is created. It's for internal purposes only, and there are no get to know your client forms. There is no paperwork to fill out. It's as private as can be. We have no obligation to share that information with anybody. If a check or a wire or an ACH is used to pay, that's it. That's where the reporting ends. The loss in privacy in and of itself is paying for it. After that, it's invisible. And we have no obligation to provide information to any third-party entity whatsoever. So, as private as it can be, then it's totally private, if that makes sense.
That totally does. That is great to hear. And I think that's it. So we can go on to online questions, Jay.
Yeah, I will. So I'm going to run through these quickly. A couple of them, I think, you guys just answered. So several people were asking about, how private is it? Are you turning these records over to the IRS? Here's one specifically that they've put a little language in here. I don't understand. I'm sure you will, Andy. The question is, when I buy AGES and ASES from you, what are the amounts above which you as seller are required to report my purchase to the tax authorities? Do you as seller have no such reporting requirements for my purchase of AGES and ASES, no matter how much I buy? Thank you.
He's asking American Gold Eagles and American Silver Eagles. No, we have none whatsoever. As long as there is no reporting requirements at all.
Okay, and here's another one from Igor. He says, hi, Andy. A lot of people in gold and silver, interesting area. I follow and trust, highly recommending you and your company. Unfortunately, I acquired my gold and silver investments prior to hearing about you and your company. My question is, would you be willing to discuss my investments and advise if I should liquidate some of them and move to other forms of owning gold and silver?
For sure. Absolutely, Igor. Yeah, we realize that we can't expect to do business with everyone, and there are people who understand metals and have already acquired them. We keep somewhat of a low profile. I mean, we've done $6 billion in sales, but we're not out there like some of the online companies. It's easy to find me. You type in my name. I've done 90 interviews since the beginning of the year. I'm everywhere on YouTube, but we keep a little bit more of a low profile. So the answer is yes. I would be more than happy to answer questions, to buy, to sell, to trade, whatever, to help store metal that you already own, whatever it is. It doesn't have to always be accumulated from us. No way.
And that's exactly how I came to you, Andy. I mean, I had my portfolio and you kind of fixed it for me.
Well,
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Absolutely.
That's great. Here's another great question. I'm pretty sure this person is talking about like facility holdings or like, vaulting service. And what they're saying is, for those holding physical gold and silver, where do you recommend storing your holdings and how safe are those facilities?
Well, we have some worldwide exclusives that have been granted to us by Brinks. So we have 6 facilities with Brinks, and that no one else has the structure that we have, period. We negotiated with Brinks 2 very interesting things. So first of all, we have facilities in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. We also now have facilities at JFK Airport, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake City. The first thing that is unique about our Brinks program is that we have the only fixed rate structure that they've offered anyone in their global services chain across the globe. Meaning everyone else in this industry is charged on a percentage of asset value. And the reason is that the largest cost component other than brick and mortar is insurance. If what you're insuring is going way up, so too is the cost to insure it. So we negotiated a fixed rate, and they gave it to us and nobody else. And right now, it really is accentuated because, like, for example, with every other storage facility around, if you owned $1 million worth of silver, that silver is now worth $1.6 million since March. You would have increased your storage fee by that amount proportionately. With us, it stays the same because it's fixed. When the price of gold and silver is moving down, a fixed rate program's not so great. When it's moving up, there's nothing like it. And as it is right now, we can beat all of the competitors, all of them, at our normal rate charged, and the price continues to move higher. We stay the same. Everyone else moves up proportionally. So we have a fixed rate. And we also have the only safe deposit box program in North America that is fully insured outside of a bank, and that is in Toronto and Vancouver. We have brand new state-of-the-art one-key boxes. not the 2-key system that most people are used to, where you put a key in and the bank or what have you puts the key in at the same time, the box opens. These are 1-key boxes where the depositor holds the only key and the only spare. A product is stored fully insured in Toronto or Vancouver. If you're not able to make it up to the box to make additions or subtractions, we send you a FedEx air bill, goes right to the facility. These are non-reportable whatsoever to the federal government, 100% legally invisible, fully insured, and fixed rate. We have some really amazing programs with Brinks. So the bottom line is that if you get to a point where holding it at home keeps you up at night for whatever reason, then yeah, we have some fantastic programs with Brinks. We also have an amazing relationship with the Dakota Depository in Fargo, North Dakota, which from a standpoint here in the United States is as far off the grid as you'll ever get. And that's a level 3 military grade vault where I keep $40 million worth of inventory and have 5 people running my logistics every day there. So whether it be Dakota or any of our Brinks facilities, these are places third party, independent from Miles Franklin, with full insurance by Lloyd's of London and safeguards and security implementation second to none that I would recommend in a heartbeat.
That's
Andy,
wonderful.
do you still do the, when I used it, you also did your own inventories periodically?
Absolutely, for sure.
You still do that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, because I know your staff is going up and making sure and sending quarterly reports of what was there.
We do.
So.
Yep, we do. I've taken part in every one of those audits. We do third-party auditing in the normal storage accounts, not the safe deposit box because they're sealed and you hold the only key. But in all of our other normal storage programs in Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, we do semi-annual audits. Now, we haven't been able to get up there for our last audit, but we still sent Inspectorate. They're a Canadian company. They work with the Royal Canadian Mint. They went in there with Brinks and audited everything without us this time because we can't get across the border. But it was still audited, and certificates are now being sent out as we speak. So, yes, we have safeguards in place, we have third-party auditing in place, and we have exclusives with Brinks in the safe deposit box program and in the rate structure that you can't find anywhere else.
Yep, that was excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Rich, this next question is for you. I'm going to let you answer it. I know the answer, but I know that you're also a monster whale in the metal space. So this person's asking, how much would a monster box be of silver and of gold?
It's got 500 coins in it. So it's 500.
500 ounces?
500 ounces.
On both, it's the same? Just more expensive on gold?
I don't have gold monster boxes. I don't even know if they make. I'm only familiar with the silver, and I have.
They do anything that comes out of the U.S. Mint. Anything, by and large, unless it's special edition, is in a box of 500 ounces. So whether it be a 1/10 ounce gold eagle, there'd be 5,000 of them in that box, or a 1 ounce gold eagle, 500 in a red box. The black box is 10th ounce. Same thing in quarter ounce and half ounce. There'd be 1,000 coins in a half ounce, etc. So you end up with absolutely 500 ounces per mint box. But when you start talking a mint box of gold, it has to be delivered by Brinks. But yes, 500 ounces in a silver mint box weighs 42 pounds.
And my personal experience is 20 ounce, 20 coin tubes of gold eagles. That's what my inventory comprises of.
If you had a monster box of gold eagles, there'd be 25 of those tubes in them. That's exactly correct.
Okay, so this person's saying that, I asked the question earlier and I said it was lingo I wasn't familiar with. They're saying, please note my above question is specific to purchase of AGES and ASES, not to purchase of other forms of physical gold and silver. I'm not sure what he's talking about. Do you know, Andy?
Well,
he's just saying just specifically if he's purchasing the physical form. Is that what he's saying?
I think he might just be asking, are there specific benefits to buying? gold and silver eagles, there are no dealer reporting requirements buy or sell American Gold Eagles.
Yeah.
Period.
Um,
The
so
only time that I would have to report something is if they paid with actual $100 bills in excess of $10,000, and that's a Form 8300. But in terms of a wire or a check or an ACH, you could spend 20 million bucks on gold eagles and silver eagles, and it's an invisible transaction as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. So this person, I'm going to mention their question, but I'm going to kind of answer it unless Andy has something he wants to add. They say, how do you determine if a private vault is safe? Certainly, like anything, I always recommend people to do your own research, right? But what I've brought you today is the best, okay? He just said to you, we have agreements no one else has. We have a set rate that's not going to raise. We have this, we have that. And so, yeah, you can do your research, and if you want to go try to find a better place, that's fine. But, you know, just like I brought you guys Caleb and Brown, and they're the best. I mean, just yesterday, guys, did you see how many wallets for Neo were closed? Here, Neo's at the high, and the retail public can't get in and out, by and large. Guess what? Caleb and Brown could get you in and out, because you know what they are? They're an institution, and when the front door opens, the back door, when the front door closes to the retail public, the back door is still open to the institutions. And people still complain and go, yeah, but Caleb and Brown charges an extra 1.5%, and I don't want to pay that. Well, okay, you just sit there and watch the price go down by $5, and you just paid, how many points was that you lost? So, you know, I've tried to bring you what I feel like is the best, and I think that if you've listened to Andy today, you're connected now to the best. And Andy will talk to you on the phone. I'm going to make a recommendation. We have kind of a banner here, Andy, called the Binge Team. It stands for Big Income, No Job. And the Binge Team, I'm going to make a recommendation to you guys. Andy is as busy, like I said yesterday, of a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. So don't call him up just to jaw jack. But if you've got some business, if you've got a portfolio you want to discuss, you know, don't call him up just to ask simple questions you can find out other places. But if you've got some business you want to do, he's an easily findable guy. He's willing to talk to you on the phone. He will email with you, all the above. We're going to give all that information right here in this webinar before we get done. So let's just move to the next question. You didn't want to add anything to that, did you, Andy?
Well, I guess the only thing I'll say is that, to me, the Brinks is the Coca-Cola or the Cadillac of storage, and the Dakota Depository from a third-party facility I feel is comfortable with as Brinks. Bottom line is, any storage facility that's not directly part of a precious metals company is a good choice. And you know, I've chosen to really work closely with Brinks because in the 30 years I've done this, I've never even for 10 seconds been anything but impressed with Brinks. They are the preeminent name in the industry, and so that's why I choose them. But as a caveat to all of this, people are always best served to hold it themselves unless they feel uneasy about it. And you could put $100,000 worth of gold in a lady's purse, and she could go walk about town and go out to a bar and walk back home and not even have a sore shoulder. But $100,000 worth of silver is going to be 400 pounds, and it gets to a point where it may be too much logistically. When you get to that point, working with a good facility is very important. It's important not to be penny wise and pound foolish, and Brinks to me is as good as it gets. So that's why I've chosen to work with them, because I don't ever have to worry about anything being stolen or impropriety or just anything that isn't completely and totally above board.
And Andy, is Delaware Depository, is that a totally different animal, or is that basically just a competitor of Brinks?
Now, I'm going to say something, and I have no vested interest in this whatsoever, but in the 30 years I've owned this company, they're the worst company I've ever worked with, period, hands down, not even close. And I would never recommend anyone store their stuff there. And I can cite you two pretty significant examples. The If it's not in an IRA, I guess it's better because they'll segregate it, but they do not segregate IRA metal. And I've had 2 clients that have been horribly mistreated by them in their IRA programs, the IRA metal, and I would, as a result, never, ever, ever work with them again, ever. And I've told them such. So I have no reason to say that. The Brinks program is ours. I do store at Dakota Depository, but I say this objectively. And if there are good things to be said about competitors or against people in the industry, corollary people in the industry, I'll tell you. But they have not earned my respect nor my trust, and I would never work with them again, ever.
Well, I kind of set you up for that one because that's how I feel too. This same person was also asking, and I guess I don't want to miss that for them. They were also asking, what do you recommend? You know, are there some things you recommend if you do want to store it, obviously offsite, like someone trying to store it for themselves? Is there any kind of like, other than the obvious, is there something that you would recommend?
Well, you could, if you're going to store it in your home, I would recommend a 2-safe program where you get one safe and put it where someone would find it. If they came into your home and threatened your family, and in that safe you have enough product and cash to appease any would-be thug. A little gun safe that you can buy at any handgun store, they always have 2 bolts in the back of them you can affix to a stud. Put that in your attic under the insulation with $500,000 worth of gold in it easily, or more. The point of it is that if you're gonna keep it at home, use a little thought. You could go to Home Depot and buy empty 1-gallon or 5-gallon paint cans, splash some paint on the outside of it, fill it with gold, and put it in the basement with your other half-empty paint cans. You could become a midnight gardener and put it in the backyard in a hole 2 feet deep. Point of it is that you know, just use a little bit of thought when you're putting it away, and removal of counterparty risk is great. It does always have the risk of theft, and so if you keep that as your central focus, you can be pretty creative in storing your metal. And I look at that as an easy problem for most people. If you live in an apartment in Manhattan, it may be different. But if you live in a home with a basement and a backyard and an attic, and you know, in a little bit of time, you can get pretty creative. You can even open up some piece of your wall in your closet, put a safe in there, put the gold in there, put the wall back together with a little mud and tape and paint, and it's sealed up in your wall. And you know, so you have the ability to get creative. If you do, then yeah, I would definitely think holding it is the best way to do it.
That's beautiful. This is a question I would love to have if I was Andy on a forum like this. This gentleman, his name is John. I know him personally. He says, what is the wait time to purchase and obtain, for example, 1 million in US Silver Eagles? What is the process to set up an account with you by My Holding Company, LLC?
So I probably have pretty close to that amount in stock. I have made it very clear to my operations department to go deep into our line of credit, as deep as can be, and buy everything that's not nailed down heading into the election. And in March, I have a friend named Chris Martinson. Chris Martinson is the purveyor of Peak Prosperity. He's a hell of an economist, but he's even a better pathologist, an epidemiologist, and he alerted me to COVID in December, that what was coming from China, no matter what, it was real, and to do something about it. And I loaded up on product, and I was one of the only companies in America to do it. And people were asking me, how do you have product? How do you have product when everyone was out of it? I have done that in spades right now. I have the best inventory I've had all year, in anticipation of the trailing edge of the storm, which I think is coming. I think we're in the eye of the hurricane right now. So I have plenty of product, and probably could do $1 million worth of Silver Eagles right now. The setting up of the account is I mean, if you're taking possession of it, there is no setting up. You pay for it through your LLC. I don't care. If you're storing it, then our precious metals websites through Brinks, there are two of them. One is preciousmetalstorage.net. That's singular, preciousmetalstorage.net, where you would find you could download a custody agreement. And the other is privatesafedepositboxes.net. Privatesafedepositboxes.net. That's preciousmetalstorage.net. Yeah, that's PERECIO. Yeah, it should be, maybe you have to put the www, I don't know, but it's preciousmetalstorage.net and privatesafedepositboxes.net. And those two websites would allow you to download the custody agreements. That's it. But the Silver Eagles I have in stock probably could do the whole thing immediately.
There you go. That's a great answer. And by the way, I think you'll be getting more of those requests from this group, if not just right now, like this one, but also as we move through the end of this year. There's some folks here with some unbelievably large holdings in crypto that are going to go 10, 20, 30x in the very near future. And already we've taken some of those this year. So I think you'll be seeing a lot of that, Andy, and that excites me for you. I want you to have that business. I think you're the guy who's earned it for sure. A couple of these questions I am skipping. It says here, did Andy say he has safety key boxes at LAX? I'm looking for private storage.
So our safe deposit box program on that side of the country would be in Vancouver. I have a Brinks segregated audited program not at LAX, it's in Los Angeles. It's at the other one's JFK, but our safe deposit box programs are in Canada, not in the United States.
Okay, here's a great question. Does anyone out there have credit cards to be able to spend your gold?
Yeah, we don't. There is goldmoney.com that does. I know the fellows at Gold Money, and they tell me that they issued tons of those credit cards and never use them because no one ever sells their gold, creating a taxable event to buy day-to-day things. It to me is kind of runs opposite of why we own gold and silver. There are places that do it, but to me, with gold and silver, you want that to be off the grid, and you don't want anyone knowing that you own it, let alone taxable events and using it to fund your credit card. So they tell me that they've issued lots of them, but no one ever uses them, rarely.
Yeah, I think it would be silly to be buying your gas with something that's planning to go up and it's supposed to be your hedging tool, you know, or maybe your tool to pass wealth along to another generation, you know, like Rich mentioned. Exactly. I think the same thing, by the way, about Bitcoin. The only time I would make a purchase with my cryptocurrency is at the top of a major run, because now you're maximizing. You know, if you take a look at Bitcoin in the last bull market went up 100x. At the top of 100x, when you tether off at that value point, to me, it's okay to make a purchase because, you know, Bitcoin drops 80% every time it finishes a bull market. It drops 83, 84% historically, 4 different times in a row. So otherwise, I'm not big on taking something like, for example, Litecoin and buying gas with it today, because Litecoin will be, you know, $3,000-$4,000 in a couple of years. Let's see here. Here's one I'm going to condense the question. This person's asking about the charting of silver. They're wondering, is there any charts out there, Andy, that you know of that include the premium in the chart?
No.
None.
Okay. I don't know that.
So easily answered. Guys, that is all the questions that are here. If anybody has a last minute question while we wrap up, we'll wait a second for that. But I just have to say, first of all, Andy, thank you. You definitely have my business. I actually want to have a couple more, when things slow down a little bit, a couple more conversations with you. I have some ideas and some things we might could put together where I could connect the dots between you and maybe a few people you don't know. And then also, I just want to say a huge thank you to Rich for introducing me to Andy, and also for the friendship. He and I have become fast friends over the last short little while, and he has certainly earned my trust as a friend in a very short period of time, and that's a hard thing to do. I've got enough knife wounds in my back that I don't make friends very easily. So if he tells me Andy's a friend of his and who he would do, only person he'd do business with, he's the same person for me. So thank you, Andy, for coming. Let's see if this was a couple more questions. Electrical area, okay, don't need to put that out. Everyone's just saying thank you, appreciate your time. So thank you for coming, Andy, and spending some time on your Saturday with us. And Rich, thank you as well. Any closing comments for either one of you is fine.
No, just thanks to both of you from me personally. You've both been great additions to my life and my security.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate, first of all, Rich, you're awesome. You're a gentleman. I've always appreciated our dealings, and for some strange reason felt like you were a friend of mine a long time ago, not just someone that I talked to on the phone. It was cool to get to hear a little bit more about you here from a different perspective, and I have always been honored to help you and your family, your kids, and what have you, your mom. That is something I take very, very seriously. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Tell these folks how to catch up with you, Andy. Tell them all how to catch up with you.
I will throw out my cell phone number here to you all. Not something I typically do, but for those of you that would like to talk with me personally, my cell phone number is 612-290-2729. That rings right to me, 612-290-2729. And my email address is andy@milesfranklin.com. Accessibility really is very important to me. And that is the trade-off to not being an online store at the expense of my free time, but it's really something I enjoy. And as long as it's not 2 a.m, chances are I'll answer.
I was just going to say, Andy, mention your time zone, because I think a lot of the group is from all over the globe.
Sure. So I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the epicenter of stupidity. And it is right now 11 a.m. here in Minneapolis. So I would caution people to call too early or too late. But text message and email, I'll certainly always respond. And accessibility is quite important to me.
Speaking of all over the globe, Rich, folks, there are folks here from Canada and from all over. I mean, Australia, you name it. Can they also make purchases with you, Andy?
Yeah, we ship all over the globe. Shipping to Canada is no problem. Shipping to Australia, as long as it's gold, is no problem. Silver can get to be pretty expensive shipping it by air. But yes, the answer is yes. We ship to Europe, to Japan, Australia, to Canada. Shipping south of the border is a little challenging, but for those people, we can provide storage solutions with Brinks. So yes, people are more than welcome to reach out to me in any capacity, and we'll certainly see if we can work with them based upon their location, but usually it's not a problem.
So for anybody that wants to hang around, you can. Andy, again, thank you, 100 thank yous. You and I will be talking in the future. You're welcome to hang around as well. I'm going to do a real quick charting. Rich, thank you.
Very well.
I'm going to do a real quick charting of a couple of things I see coming in silver and in gold. And then from there, if we may go into just a touch on how that's going to affect the crypto as well. Let me remove a couple screens here so I can get back to my screen. George, what are these guys seeing on the screen? The chart of silver?
Yeah, they are seeing the chart of silver.
Okay. So guys, from here, I only expect 2 things. I expect that macro vision on silver and gold is it's going up. So that's the long-term big vision of both silver and gold. What I'm going to do here on silver, you can also plot on gold as well. But I think we only see basically 2 things. I think we either complete a B, C correction that probably might come to this area. on silver. And from that point forward, we just continue patterns like that over and over and over again, where we're going to just see impulsive moves in 5-wave fashions. And when those 5 waves are up, we do an ABC correction, and we're basically into the macro bull of silver and gold. So where that on that pullback right there, I'm kind of expecting on the dollar index to see kind of a sharp rise, maybe even a event that looks a lot like what we saw in March. I'm not going to pretend to think I know. I don't know. Nobody knows. But this is my best guess. Now, if we don't get a full ABC correction here, I think we will also see the potential of it just getting very boring for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we probably create some type of pattern that looks about like this. Maybe it even tilts down a little, right? Maybe we even get one that starts there, comes across here, and then ends up down here in a declining wedge where it's just a very boring fall, you know, just kind of creeps down a little. Then after that, just all you get is you get a break to the upside, okay? I think there's a lot of events taking place right now that can cause this and a little bit volatility, but you can already see how tight, if we blow this up here on the daily chart, you can already see how tight the price is getting even right here. And boring, right? How tight and boring we're getting right there. And we'll put the other one right here. So it doesn't have to do a full ABC. It doesn't have to come here, here, and here. That's actually where I'm leaning. I'm leaning toward that. And that falls in line with why we've taken so many profits lately in some of our recent positions in crypto, is because if we see this fall, and we'll go to gold next just to show you the same thing. If we see that fall in gold, that's going to be a great buying opportunity, in my opinion, on gold and silver, but also a great buying opportunity in the crypto space. You can see from our oscillators here that relative strength is very low on the trading side. As price holds up in the top, our oscillators are oscillating down, but I think you're going to get a spill of the price and the oscillators will come down here and get oversold, and that sets you up for the next rise, okay? Same thing will happen in the price. Here, I think you're going to see in the 1700s, probably about right here. We could even plot a box for that. I actually think, ladies and gentlemen, that you're going to see this type of move in the next 14 days. Like you'll see the beginning stages of this move, if not all of it, in the next 14 days. I'm honestly expecting the bank index to absolutely collapse in the next 7 days. Probably, I think it's holding the 6,900 area. I think you're going to see the banking index collapse to about 50%. Let me tell you what also I would think from a macro perspective is going to really fuel crypto as well as the precious metals is any type of bank bail-in. And I've told you guys for almost 24 months that my most important sources that I have been warning me and continue to warn me and say, get your money out of the bank, get your money out of the bank. And of course, you know, this year or last year in September, a lot of new banking regulation came on. And so now when you're going into the bank and you want to get money, you have to order it ahead of time. You have to, when you come in, they're going to make you uncomfortable by saying, well, you know, what's your driver's license number? And what's your career? And when do you plan to retire? And they're asking you all these questions for anything over $3,500 in cash. So I've been making recommendations to you guys for quite some time. If you have a storehouse of cash, to put yourself on a weekly paycheck just under that number, and every week go to the bank and get your cash, right? Just go get your cash. I mean, you're talking about up to about $14,000 a month you can be pulling out. I think that for me, if my reserve is, let's say, for me, I like to have about 2 years worth of being able to live my life the way I already live it. I like to have that in reserves. The way that I set this up is half in cash and half in the bank. That's the way that I typically do it. Other than that, I want it in crypto and I want it in precious metals. Now, I want to show you guys something that probably no one's paying attention to here. I want to show you a correlation on this chart that I think you're going to appreciate. You see this fall, this really hard spike down, and then we came back up and we couldn't get back up. Now, unfortunately, we don't get a lot of volume. We could probably look at we could get some volume here. As we came back up, here you had huge volume and small candles. It's telling me people are selling. Here again, you have pretty good volume, very little movement in the price, people selling. So the market to me is signaling a lot what we saw in Bitcoin in 2000. I'm going to roll over to that chart in just a minute. But a lot what we saw in Bitcoin, I need to reverse that, sorry. Let's put it down here. A lot about what we saw in Bitcoin, I totally screwed that up. Let's go and do it this way. There we go. That's what I want to show you, is this pattern here. And we saw this, I'm going to show it to you right here on Bitcoin. This happened. We were kind of getting the fake out. We'll go back over here. Let me just take us back to here and slide the chart back all the way back right here. Here's the exact same pattern. And it's a much bigger pattern, but the pattern still is the same. Okay, right there's the pattern. Okay, and we had this huge spill come in Bitcoin right there. And it even had started to kind of fake people out here because we were making higher lows all the way across the bottom, right? But here was the point, and here was the learning tip. You can look at this with gold. We'll see how it plays out. Here was the learning tip. So here you get a lower low. So you had this low. You didn't quite make a lower low, but you made a lower low here. And every time this came to either the same low or a lower low, it did not make a higher high. It came down here, it made a higher low, did not make a higher high. Makes a higher low, did not make a higher high. So in essence, the market was signaling to us, to be honest, that we should have been looking for this. And that was the learning tip. You guys might remember I did a very long video about this back in 2019 when that happened. Maybe it was 18. Yeah, it was in 18 when that happened. So now we go back to gold and look at the exact same thing. And by the way, on the gold dip, I don't suspect we're going to see, we'll do this one since I put the pattern on there. I don't suspect we're going to see much lower than, I would not guess much lower than 1700, but probably realistically about 1750. And you can kind of do the math on that just by taking the amount that's in the chart pattern and duplicating it down here. But in reality, all we're really looking at, if we do the monthly chart, and a lot of people, by the way, you might notice that we had a false breakout. We had a false breakout in the S&P. We had a false breakout in Bitcoin. We had a false breakout in Ethereum. So guys, let me take you over from gold here in just a minute and show you a pattern that we learned from in 2019. But before I do that, I want to just kind of chart the potential price of gold. Okay, so if we're looking at, and as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, if we're looking at this being an A and a B and a C, my guesstimate is about this blue line right here. And the way I come up with that blue line is I'm looking at the monthly chart. And yes, gold came to here, right? At some point in the past, 2011, I think it was, it came to here. But look at all the monthly candles that kind of touched this area, started or stopped around that $1,700 price point. We can even pull it down to there. And you get starting and stopping 2 months, a touch. So probably, 1826 down to about 1700 is my guesstimate. Now, don't forget that there's a lot going on in the world, whether it be the election, the coronavirus, the printing of the system. So let's don't forget that there's a trend line down here. Okay, if you blow out this market big, there's a trend line right down here. And sometimes we tend to trend back to our trend line, all the way back down to here. I would guess we're going to do a move to here and then continue higher. And on that move higher, we may see something like 23, maybe 2,600, somewhere in that nature. And then from there, we could have a long couple of year pullback to this trend line, which could then also come back in at around $2,000, right? So let's just see how it plays out. I really think long term, we've got a 1 up here, a 2 back here. This is probably most of 3. If not, we're going to do like a ABC pullback, 1 more push up to like 2,300, and that will be 3. And then we're going to do an ABC correction, which will be short. Let me show it to you like this. Let me just put it in here, okay? That way you guys will have it. This is 1, and this is a monthly chart. So that's a very complex 2 right there. Very complex 2. Then you have this as a 3, but this is probably, more than likely, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, now we're doing a 4, and then we go up to 5, let's call it 2,300. Then we move back like this again, like maybe we come there, only this time because this 1 to 2 was complex, this move up to here, this next move up from here will be, or the move down from 3 to 4 will be pretty quick. So because the other one was very, very long and drawn out, this is many, many months, this will be short. Let's call it maybe 4 to 5 months, okay? And then a move up here. It could even be less than that. It could be 1 month, okay? And then another push up. This could maybe take us up to around the $3,000 mark. So this is kind of the first move up. From here, we could do an ABC correction. From there, 5 waves up always leads to an ABC correction of something like that. Okay? It doesn't have to come that low, but something like that. All right? So anyway, overall, that's kind of the macro picture of gold. And then, by the way, from there, up more, just continue up. The bull market continues. But that gives you kind of a general game plan to be looking at. Now, let's go to Bitcoin and let's take a look at a pattern that taught us a valuable lesson in 2018. Okay? I'm going to come down to the 3-day chart. I think it'll come off a little better that way. And we're going to go over here. Here we go. So this is the exact same pattern that we're looking at on gold and silver right now. And what you want to note about this pattern is as it comes across this $6,000 region and keeps touching or coming close, touched it here, close here, touched it there, touched it, touched it, touched it, touched it, touched it. Each time it did that, when it went back up, it was not making a pattern of higher highs. It was actually making lower highs. So just to give you that, here you go. Here's a high. Here's a lower high. Here's a lower high. Here's a lower high. Okay? I'm not even going to count this because this doesn't count. This was a couple day period where Bitcoin went up $3,000 and it was on a scammy deal out of China. We'll call it more like this. Okay, it certainly didn't close any candles up there. And then here, and when you get to the end of this apex, guess what? We got a big spill. Going back and actually looking at that whole scenario taught me some valuable lessons. And I think right now that's what I see in gold and silver. And that's how come I personally am calling for, expecting, not predicting, not saying it must happen, but I am kind of expecting here as Bitcoin has gone up on very little volume that sometime maybe this week we hit, I think Sunday or Monday we might hit like 11.3 area. And from there, I think we just come down from there. And we come down for multiple weeks. And as I said, my target on that price fall is around 8,400. As it's happening, we'll look at it more and more and just see if that's going to be the case. If we change our target, we change our target. That's going to give us a great buy opportunity. That's the thing I want to leave you guys with today. I've said this in the past and I was wrong. I'm going to say it again because there is a time where I say this and I'm not wrong, and it might very well be this time. I really think that either I'm wrong and we're not going to drop and we just kind of get really boring and get sideways. So for example, we could do one of these numbers, okay, where it does go down, but it doesn't really collapse. Okay, and we end up with a pattern like so. We need to raise that up just a hair. Give this thing room to get up to about 11.3 this weekend. So we go from there, and then we bounce down and up and over here, and then go up. Okay, so this is one option. But if we collapse and we break past the low of about 98, 9,700, I would think we're heading on down to some of those lower targets of around 8,400. And that will complete this ABC pattern here, A, B, C. And I think quite possibly this would happen by the second or third week of October. And probably when you see this last leg coming in, it will probably also have a viewpoint. Excuse me, sorry, wrong one. Give me the blue one there, please. There we go. It will probably also have the viewpoint of a falling wedge. Something about like so, right? A much bigger pattern. And then it breaks out from here and goes. But here's what I want to say to you. I really, really think we are here at this time, and this is our last opportunity to buy cryptos at these prices. Because the market did not go up in September, it didn't go up to $18,000. It's actually come down and looks like it's heavy enough to keep coming down. Again, don't forget, it doesn't have to. It can just keep going up from here. But if we get that fall down and it didn't go up, once we come off that bottom at the end of October, 1st of November, let's call it, I think we're on about a 3-month drive in the price of all of crypto. November, December, January. I really think we're going to be on a 3-month drive. Because of that driving point, we're going to go blowing past some of the targets we were expecting in September. So let's see how it plays out. I'm totally speculating. I'm excited about it because, it obviously exists. You can look at the charts and see that it exists. And so from that perspective, it does get me excited. I'm also very excited. We've already broken out of our, 31-month pattern. Now, if we come down to 8,400, we're going to test it at 9,000. We're going to do a little overperformance to 84. And then I really expect we'll see a pull of the rubber band and we'll head back the other direction. And it's going to give us a chance to buy a lot of these projects we've sold out for profit recently back at a nice low price. And then you've got a 90-day expansion period. So to me, it's just going to be a very exciting time all the way around. Thank you again, Andy. Thank you again, Rich. I can't thank you guys enough for coming on and doing this and being a part of this with our group. And for all the folks that put your questions in, thank you for being here. Folks, 2020 is your year. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. More to come this week.